Hello, everyone. Welcome to Transform Now. I'm your host, Michael Marchuk.
And I'm Brad Hairston.
And this is our weekly pulse check of AI and automation news. And as you know, we have all the links for these articles in the show notes. So, Brad, you ready to get going?
I am ready. Let's do it.
Excellent. So, our first article today is from Fast Company. And this was widely broadcast over the last few days here, talking about Microsoft's, the article is Microsoft's Majorana, I don't know how you pronounce it, but Majorana 1, widening the quantum fields. But are we any closer to a eureka moment? Obviously, this is about Microsoft's announced quantum computing processor using a really new technology that they had been trying to achieve for, I guess, 20 years now. So it looks like they've come close to doing something that others couldn't do. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, Michael, this article is challenging the boundaries of my technical acumen. So I'm going to do my best with this. But fortunately, we have been talking about quantum computing lately, even before this announcement. And I have a good podcast guest who's been on a couple times. I had him on recently. He's with Fujitsu, and he's a quantum computing expert. So I think I understand generally what it's about, but this was a big announcement. So again, all of our computers operate using bits, right? Which is the smallest unit of digital information. And this bit can either be a 0 or a 1. So quantum researchers, however, develop bits that can be both 0 and 1 at the same time, which is something that can dramatically speed up computations. So these qubits, as they're called, are very difficult to develop. They're hard to scale, and they have to be nurtured very carefully. Otherwise, they generate errors. And when I say carefully, think about temperatures like almost absolute 0 is the environment.
Getting back to your science days, right?
Exactly. So Microsoft, this article is informing us, Microsoft has been working on technology in this space for about 20 years. And to do this, to accomplish what they wanted to do, they developed a new class of materials called topoconductor, which they claim is actually an entirely new state of matter. So it's not solid, it's not liquid, it's not gas, it's something in a totally new category. And it hosts these special particles, which you call the Majorana fermions. Sounds like something out of Star Trek. So these particles enable topological qubits, which store information in a way that naturally shields out all the noise that tends to affect qubits. So this is a big innovation. You have this ability to keep them more stable. And then furthermore, they've been able to put 8 of these topological qubits on their Majorana 1 chip. Now, 8 is just a starting point, but they claim this is the path to putting millions of these on one of their chips. And to put it in perspective, 1 million qubit quantum computer, a 1 million qubit quantum computer would be more powerful than all the world's computers operating together. So that's essentially, it's what we're looking at in terms of the potential computing power. So,
of course, the question is, will it take enough power for all of the same amount of power as all of the computers in the world operating simultaneously?
Yeah, exactly. Microsoft is saying that this will solve real world problems and basically accelerate the timeline around quantum. So we're talking years, not decades. And we know that Google recently said they think quantum is about a decade away. NVIDIA said it's 15 to 30 years away. So this is, stands as a total different, much more positive forecast on quantum from Microsoft based on what they've been able to do with this new form of matter that they've developed. So now the flip side is it took them a very long time to develop this, and they had to do it atom by atom. So there are other companies in the market, Fujitsu, for example, but IBM and Google, they're much further ahead, and they've been generating these quantum models for a lot longer than Microsoft has. So Microsoft is still in a bit of catch-up mode. I think they've just really rocked the world by coming forward with this very innovative way to potentially bring quantum sooner. So let's see what happens.
It's very interesting, and it just reminds me of the Tony Stark story, where they're creating new elements, and we're just going to find out that there's some guy in his garage somewhere working with a pair of pliers that'll be able to do it for a billionth of the cost and have it running tomorrow. Because that's just the way things are working these days. So thank you for going through that.
Yeah, and I didn't even mention this, but there is a potential intersection here of quantum and the world of generative AI. You think about all these massive models that require incredible compute power. Maybe quantum computing is the way to accelerate that and to allow models to be generated and trained much faster, to allow researchers to look at multiple possible solutions at once. I hope that happens. I mean, that's a good thing, right? If we can develop new drugs faster, if we can solve complex issues faster, that's good for society in general. So let's keep our fingers crossed on that front.
Absolutely. So our next one, carrying on with the exploration of new things, TechSpot. The article is Gen 3 AI models, Claude 3.7 and Grok 3, push boundaries in coding and complex tasks. So this past week, both Anthropic's Claude and XAI's Grok 3 dropped, and very interesting. I got to play with both of them, and it's a really interesting mix here. What's neat with all this stuff is the pace of progress we're seeing between these revolutionary new model generations that seemed like they're getting shorter and shorter between the revolutions. Yes. So, which is kind of what we'd expect if we've got all this magic happening all at once. So, with these new models, there's some interesting things that are happening, comparisons that are happening. Can you kind of walk us through it?
Yeah, Grok 3 has certainly been stealing a lot of headlines, and this article talks about it as well as Claude 3.7, because both of them have really been showing, advanced capabilities around complex tasks, around mathematics and coding. And Grok 3 alone is the first known model to employ an order of magnitude greater computing power than its predecessor, GPT-4. So it's already shown some pretty impressive stuff. Claude 3.7 has showcased that it has substantial performance improvements and has introduced some new reasoning capabilities, which has got a lot of people excited. Both of these companies and both of these products are basically leveraging two different laws, which have called the laws of scaling. And both of these were actually put out there by OpenAI. The first one is the premise that larger models trained with more computing power exhibit enhanced capabilities, and it's not a linear thing. So typically a 10-fold increase in computing power is required to achieve a linear improvement in performance. This completely explains why Elon built that massive data center. We talked about that last week, right? Grok 3. I mean, the scale of computing power involved in training these new models is massive. In fact, it's the equivalent of running the article says, a modern smartphone for 634,000 years. Oh, that's a pretty mind-boggling comparison.
Absolutely. So,
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to go into is we have all these kind of disparities between adding more compute power, as they talk about this particular law, to scale it up, and we've seen that with Grok 3 adding massive amounts of compute power in obviously a very short period of time, as we talked last week. And then we have the sort of opposite end of the spectrum of DeepSeek, right, going the stealthy other way. obviously we've also seen a bunch of issues related to DeepSeek in terms of not only its training, but some of its performance as we looked at it. But go on to the second one before I carry on.
Yeah. So the second law of scaling, as they call it, is based on the idea that AI performance can be improved by allowing the model more time to process information during problem solving. So for extra credit, Michael, what is the new acronym that has come up on this podcast several times that relates to this? Do you recall?
New acronym. Grunge?
The OT, remember, chain of thought.
Yes.
That's what they're talking about. So this idea that not only does more computing power generate better models, but if you allow your model to think and to take a second to kind of fact check itself before giving you an answer, it's going to give you higher results. And so Grok 3 and Claude 3.7 are both banking on both of these two laws of scaling to help them continue to be out there on the front. So what does all this mean? I mean, models are getting more capable, faster than ever. It means more automation. It means more reasoning, probably gets us much closer to AGI. Let's just make sure this technology is put to use in the best places, is all I can say.
Absolutely. So the chain of thought concept, it's been around, but it's also been hidden in some of the earlier models from OpenAI. When DeepSeek came out, they basically exposed the chain of thought reasoning process within their model. And I think others have now decided that this whole reasoning concept is actually a good thing, and it kind of lets you show your work when you're doing these processes. So that also opens up some hope then for some better governance as we're adding AI, because we can take a look back at how we got to a certain problem to either see if it can be fact checked more appropriately, perhaps even by another AI, or if we need to have people involved to support the outcomes that are being generated by these chain of thought processes. So thank you for going through that. I appreciate that. So next article is from Financial Times, and this one is related to Amazon and their investments they're making in some of their very large warehouses to be able to offer more rapid services and more accurate services, leveraging AI, but also robotics within their environment. They've talked about, during COVID, they cut a bunch of jobs because they kind of had to. They didn't want to have people get exposed, and sort of led themselves into this robotic era, which has then accelerated to give even more accuracy and more rapid access to the products on their shelves. So walk us through this article.
Yeah, so it tells us that Amazon is spending $100 billion in capital expenditure this year. 3/4 of that they're spending on data centers and on the Gen AI component of their business. The other side, the $25 billion remaining, is going to their e-commerce business. And so the article talks about ways they're trying to cut costs and improve the efficiency and the robotics within their warehouses. They're getting more competition from places like China with Temu. Hard to believe, but they're feeling the heat. So they're needing to continue to invest on that side. Morgan Stanley, I think, said in the article, that they expect $10 billion in annual savings by the end of this decade as a result of all these investments. So I'm not surprised to hear that they're, investing there. Nor am I surprised that the bulk of their capital expenditure is going toward more data centers like everybody else. In my mind, Michael, this raises the question: whatever happened to the Amazon drones? Do you remember those?
I do. I mean, I'm guessing we'll probably see something like that as we go into the near future, as the drone capabilities continue to expand.
Yeah,
there were things from those floating blimps that would be warehouses in the sky, allowing products moving to and from. To me, that's that's George Jetson kind of far in the future type of stuff. But more likely having these drones coming from the local delivery trucks for helping to support more localized delivery in a more rapid fashion. I fully foresee this happening. But one of the things this article mentioned, which I thought was interesting, is the Amazon is putting all kinds of robotics in and all kinds of AI in, but they're also spending a whole lot of money on training workers. And there's a reason why they are, because they can't find workers to be able to support these super advanced activities that they're implementing right now. This is all cutting edge stuff. So they said since 2019, they spent over $1.2 billion upskilling their workers, and they still are facing shortages in the labor market. This is definitely something that we have seen in other industries, but this, I believe, we start looking at the kind of leading indicators.
Yeah,
this is a very forward-thinking company, and they are running into issues. So when these other companies, you get a bank or an insurance company or some others, starting moving forward on this, they're going to be competing for that same very small labor pool.
Yeah, definitely. Good for Amazon to invest in those employees. That's going to give them better longevity, you would think, in those roles, and going to equip them for the era that we're currently in. So, very, very happy to see that. And we'll see. Back on the drones, I know they deployed them in my the town I went to college in College Station, Texas, which is kind of funny that they went live there. But it just occurred to me, my mother-in-law lives there. Maybe I could ask her to get an Amazon delivery for me, and we'll see if
by drone.
A drone happens to land it on her front porch. That would be interesting to test out one day. Yeah.
So the other thing this article mentioned, which I thought was also very telling, and this is something we've talked about on our podcast several times, and just recently we had McKinsey on talking about digital twins, and they indicated that Amazon worked with NVIDIA to help develop digital twins of their warehouses to get simulation before they deployed their autonomous robots within their environments. I thought that's very interesting because it gives them the ability to not only to train these robots, without doing physical activities. They can create a complete simulation and have all the logic built in by the time they deploy these robots. But it also allows them to do a bunch of what if scenarios. Like, hey, what if one gets jammed up somewhere else or something else happens here? They can run all those simulations without actually having to break stuff on their delivery floor during normal operations. So very interesting concept. And I think that's something that we're going to see or should see in other industries as well as they start deploying more AI.
Yeah, no doubt.
Speaking of that, from Route 50, which is the first time I've actually found this particular site, there's an article called Not Your Parents' Automation, How Generative AI Will Impact Jobs in Major Cities. And this was an interesting perspective as we talk about prior generations experiencing automation impacts to the jobs. So if we go back in time, we start looking at things like way back. Okay, hey, we just introduced the automobile, and all of those people who are in horse breeding, horse tending, horseshoe making, etc., started seeing fewer and fewer jobs as more and more people got automobiles rather than horses. Then you talk about mining and other activities, a lot of industrial like robots that were putting together manufacturing things. And these, we call them blue collar jobs, were really affected by the automation. But now AI, especially all the generative AI stuff that we've been talking about, we're starting to see a different kind of impact, aren't we?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this article had an interesting title. In the end, I'm not sure it shed like any real brand new insights. But it is, I mean, you see articles like this all the time. I mean, this one is based on research from the Brookings Institute, which has concluded that unlike previous generations, as you said, previous generations of automation impacted small towns and rural communities, But this wave of automation is going to have a heavier impact on larger cities and larger metro areas and more white collar kind of urban environments. So that's not necessarily unexpected or shocking news, but the researchers go on to say that they're concerned about generative AI exacerbating the divide between rural and urban America. And this is something that apparently they've explored quite extensively. So in my opinion, I mean, there's already a divide between the types of work that are done between urban and rural centers. But does it divide us as a people? I mean, I'm not sure Gen AI makes it worse, or that it makes us not want to go to the rural cities or interact with people. I mean, we've always had different work performed in different places. And also, there's been lots of good research about the fact that Gen AI is impacting different industries in a different way. In fact, I think about GAI Insights, the research firm that we've had on, that have a framework that judges the impact on companies based on how much they do around words, images, numbers, and sounds. Those are the industries that do that are going to be impacted and really transformed in the next 3 to 4 years. But if you get into manufacturing and farming and some of the things out in the more rural areas, they're going to see some impact, but it's not going to happen for a while. So should people get comfortable with the new tech? Absolutely. And we all do that. I mean, when the smartphone appeared, that affected everybody, not just people in the metro centers. And people are resilient. They will figure out how to use it. They'll start to integrate it in their day-to-day. So I don't think just because we're talking about AI and Gen AI, that means there's a learning curve that some people cannot climb, no matter where they live, no matter what job they have. So I guess this article and the nature of it didn't really jive with my line of thinking, but what did you think?
So I had a slightly different perspective. I agree with you that the adoption in rural America, or rural anywhere, is going to take a while to get deployed. It just does.
Yeah.
But because of the pervasiveness of past activities, like you talk about the rolling out of the smartphone, so we have 3G, 4G, 5G that's now available to rural areas now that didn't have that before. This harkens back to the days where, well, where do we have the telephone line? Where do we have a railroad going? Now, with that infrastructure, it has become more ubiquitous, even in rural areas. Then you throw on top of that something like a Starlink, which now is available literally in the middle of the ocean. You could have the same type of access as you do in the middle of New York City. This is important to kind of understand. The availability of these capabilities now are more available in rural versus what they used to be in urban-only centers. But then you also have the idea of, while we have white-collar work that's obviously being impacted, you mentioned, text, images, whatever. The idea behind that is sound, but it also shows that perhaps this whole digital twin concept moving into a rural environment. Well, let's do a digital twin of a farm, and we leverage thermal imaging of the ground to be able to support new things, or whatever I'm making this stuff up. I don't know about farming technology, but the idea behind it is there's something else that you can apply in a rural area that may actually impact that. Or you can maybe leverage lesser expensive digital twin technologies for smaller manufacturers who might be in more rural areas, allow them to compete on a grander scale, because now they have the capabilities of doing that what if simulation and applying the same type of maybe lesser expensive robotic automation internally, physical robots, to do their automated delivery or development. So I think there are opportunities. I do believe you're right, though. It's definitely going to be far more prevalent in urban areas. And I do think that the rural areas, just in general, will also see some benefit. It may just look different.
Yeah. I guess in the end, just don't agree with the idea that this is a big issue, or it creates worsens a divide in our society that will be bad for us or be bad for our country.
There are plenty
or
of other ways that we are dividing ourselves,
Yeah,
and I don't think this is one of them.
exactly.
There. With that, we will conclude today's pulse check. So, as you know, all the stuff is in the show notes. Leave a comment. Let us know what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and what you'd like to maybe hear more about. But for next time, we'll have another guest on our show who's going to provide some more additional insights well beyond those of the two knuckleheads you're listening to now. So we'll see you next time on the Pulse Check.